Board of Trustees, Mr. Philanthropic, eminent guests, speakers. Welcome to the Undefeated Mind Workshop by Dr. Zoran Josipovic. Hope I pronounced that correctly. It gives us great pleasure to welcome you to UBS Command House for this special lecture. For this event, we would like to thank the Greater Good Series sponsor, Newsman Realty, Mr. K.H. Dunn. Thank you very much. And UBS and Shangri-La Hotels. Now I would like to introduce today's chair for the workshop, Prof. Kwa Yi Kwok, a professor and senior consultant psychiatrist for the Department of Psychological Medicine at the Yongloo Lin School of Medicine. Prof. Kwa, please.
Before we begin, I want to thank Mr. Wee Sinto. If not for Sinto, I wouldn't know there's a place here called Command House. Dear friend, and Sinto is a very adventurous chap. We go to exotic places of the world, have to Tibet and all that, and so we are here. And also, all of you for coming here. I was trying to figure out what you were saying about the undefeated mind, and I remember Sinto told me that, can we steal this line from you? And a couple of years ago, I wrote a book based on a true story of a Singapore patient of mine who had mental health problems and who survived. And the book is called The Undefeated Mind. And although there are a lot of crises, you can survive. And the book is shortlisted for a big award in London. All right. Now, we've done a big study in Singapore on mental health problems a couple of years ago, a massive study. And we found that the commonest mental health problems, can anyone tell me, actually in Singapore?
Depression.
Depression, well, what's the other one? I'll ask Dr. Su, my colleague in the university. Anxiety, that's right, anxiety. Commonly, people come to our clinic anyway, very tense, can't sleep. There are many things that can be done. Last week was a university exam for a medical student. So in one session, the student came in and asked him, when you are under tremendous stress, what kind of hormones is secreted in your brain? He was shocked. He thought I would ask him, if you are under anxiety, what are symptoms of anxiety? But we reversed the question and asked him, if you are under tremendous stress, even for all of you now coming first time to this command house, what kind of hormones is secreted in your brain now? He was shocked. So they, okay, never mind, you just sit back for a while, close your eyes and breathe in slowly. After that, he stopped. It's more calm. Now, what's the answer? Well, cortisol and adrenaline. There you are. With that tremendous stress, there's a block. You can't think properly. Professor Zoran Josipovic from New York University, they've done a lot of research on meditation and also on using a new technology called the functional MRI. Functional MRI is magnetic resonance imaging, in which you put you through a chamber. Anyone has done an MRI here in this room? For your leg, sorry. Now, you go to MRI with a new form of imaging. They can image your very sharply, your brain, all that. But in functional MRI, we put you into the chamber and we do some tests for you, your memory. In fact, we're not imaging your mind, your brain, we're imaging the human mind. It is a fantastic technology. And a lot of work is it also appeared on the BBC and also Newsweek, is it? All right. So Zoran has done tremendous things. So in this series, he told me it's a workshop. He expects us to work. Techniques on meditation and how we can remain calm in the midst of crisis. So welcome, Professor Josipovic.
Thank you. Thank you.
You see one of those people playing tennis now in the Australian Open.
Thank you, Professor Gao, and it's a great pleasure to be here and a great honor. If you don't mind, I'll try sitting here and then I'll see how I do. Before I came, I got some instructions on what kind of to talk about here, and they sort of changed several times while I was traveling and since I came. And I got a new set of rules this morning from Sinto, and I will follow them. I think that one thing that interests me very much about studying contemplative practice and studying how the brain changes during the contemplative practice is that we actually have this capacity to optimize our functioning. And it appears that there is some innate mechanism in the brain towards self-optimization. Brain is a highly complex system, as the very popular phrase, a sort of a catchphrase of 21st century. It's the most complexly organized matter that we know of in the universe. It has a certain capacity to organize itself in an optimal way. And in the ancient contemplative traditions, that this has been noticed and it has been explained in different ways. But one way that it has been talked about is that we have some quote-unquote part of ourselves or aspect of our mind that is whole and undamaged, that actually remains undamaged even when we suffer a lot in life. And it's out of that seed of that fundamental level of mind that actually arise capacity for change. So there are many different contemplative traditions and many different techniques that we can study. And in current neuroscience understanding, in the current cognitive science understanding, we divide them all into three very large categories. And we understand them on the basis of what part of our brain is being used or necessary to exercise for these particular types of contemplative techniques. So the first category is, in a way, easiest to understand, and it's called focused attention. And so focused attention is probably the most common form of contemplative practice throughout the world. It simply means voluntarily choosing the object of attention, holding attention on that object, which means continually selecting that object as a focus of attention. It means suppressing the distracting stimuli in the environment, both and also within ourselves. So it's a voluntary, we call it voluntary top-down, internally generated attention mechanism. And this attention mechanism has been studied fairly extensively in the neuroscience. We know quite a lot about the brain mechanism underlying it, not so much from studying contemplative traditions, but from studying disorders of attention, such as attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity disorders, and also a kind of problems that happen in the brain injuries, when the brain is injured in these areas. And these are areas in the frontal part of the brain and also in the parietal cortex, and a particular way that they function together during voluntary attention. So in the Theravada Buddhism, this style of meditation is called samadhi meditation, or shamatha. Probably it's the quickest way to notice or to derive benefit from a contemplative practice. The benefit of focused attention meditation is pretty much immediate. First thing that we notice is that it has immediate effect on the health, on certain physiological parameters that we can measure, such as, for example, decrease in the stress levels, decrease in the blood pressure, then also a number of other physiological parameters that have to do with the increase in the neurotransmitters that are usually associated with more positive kind of relaxed and enjoyable experience, such as dopamine, serotonin, and so on, and decrease in the neurotransmitters such as norepinephrine, which is a precursor of adrenaline, cortisol, and so on. Now, in the second category is what we call open monitoring style of practice. And open monitoring, the term comes from the cognitive science, which recognizes that we have another kind of attention, which is not voluntarily focused, but it's involuntary, and it is kind of like a radar that tells us what is significant in the environment that we must pay attention to. And this involuntary attention gets captured by whatever is most salient stimulus in the environment. This is a type of attention that allows us and other animals to survive. If there is suddenly a certain noise that sounds dangerous, our attention will be captured, and this mechanism will override everything else that we're doing. Yeah, if we're walking through a jungle and suddenly we hear some growling someplace, our whole attention is going to go there, and whatever we were thinking about is going to be overridden by this involuntary attention system. Now, this attention system, what it can do is basically when we use it consciously, when we're exercising it, such as we can do in mindfulness meditation or vipassana, where we track moment to moment the changes in our experience, it can basically become very finely developed so that we can notice minute changes in our experience. And it allows us the skill that we get from that, or for the want of a better word, the benefit, the immediate benefit that we get from that is that we don't stick to our experience as much. In other words, we're training to notice the changes in our experience from moment to moment without preference. So whatever we're experiencing, whatever it's occurring to us, we just notice it and let it go. So we're not saying, oh, I like this sensation, I'm going to stick with this for a while and I'm going to forget about everything else. And it's not like that. We notice it, it's a pleasant, then in the next moment something unpleasant, that we just notice that. Whatever next happens, we just notice it. So we're exercising this monitoring faculty of our mind. So exercising this monitoring faculty has been shown scientifically to help with our mental strength, our capacity to deal with pain, particularly chronic pain, chronic states like depression, chronic physical and mental conditions in which we feel that we are stuck in a particular pattern of thinking and feeling, and we can't unglue ourselves from it. And so this kind of meditation is very good from getting some distance from the experience and being able to tolerate our experience, becoming stronger in accepting what experience is. When I first started meditating as a fairly young sort of fellow, I came to the United States and I fairly quickly became introduced into a rather sort of a sophisticated, high-level Buddhist philosophy and practice, way over my head. And one thing that teachers would often say is, it's all perfect just as it is. And it would drive me nuts, you know. What do you mean it's all perfect? You know, my life is not so perfect. You know, I'm not as happy as I would like to be. It's not perfect at all. But what teachers like this point at something very interesting, and it is that in terms of our experience, there is only one reality. And this is this reality that's happening now. And in terms of this reality that's happening now, we have a choice. We can either accept this reality as it is, or we can pretend that this is not reality, that we would rather live in some other option. And until we actually accept our experience as it is, just as it is right now in the moment, we can't actually change because we're trying to change from a place that's not real. So always the first step in being able to actually effectively change is to accept what our reality actually is. This is, of course, easier said than done because the way we grow up is that we essentially develop a very complex set of mechanisms to protect ourselves from those parts of truth about ourselves and our life that we don't like. So we have various types of defenses, and it's the good way of saying it, interpretations or stories that we tell about. Mindfulness practice and open monitoring. So open means without preference, without judgment, and monitoring means just to watch. So this second category of contemplative practices facilitates this ability to notice what is real, what is actually happening to us in the moment, in the great detail. And studies have shown that actually we are capable, with practice, of much more precise and accurate knowledge about what is actually occurring in our environment. So we can become much more sensitive perceptually, we can be more sensitive in terms of our emotions, and we can be more sensitive in terms of our cognitions. So these different aspects can optimize, we become more precise as a result of these kind of practices. Now there is a third category which is known in the contemplative traditions, but it hasn't yet been sufficiently studied. And part of the reason that in many contemplative traditions it's considered as kind of a quote-unquote secret, a little bit secret. And also the other reason is that we don't have a good conceptual grasp on it from the side of science. We don't have constructs in the field of science that can allow us to easily understand this third category. And the third category, I and some other colleagues, we called it non-dual awareness. And non-dual awareness is a technical term from the contemplative traditions, but basically it means awareness which encompasses all our experience at the same time, both internal and external. And it serves basically like essentially like a mirror. It's simply just registers what is there in the moment. It has some similarity to the monitoring, but it's not actually an active paying of attention. It's not an active attentional mechanism, and studies of the brain show that actually the mechanism is probably a little bit different than attentional system for this awareness meditation. The reason why this third style of meditations evolved is that we can very easily get into a difficulty when we think about using these techniques to improve ourselves, to improve our life. And the way that we get into this difficulty, and this has been noticed in the contemplative traditions for centuries, is that we have a set of experiences that we're not happy with, and we can call this set of experiences one version of a false identity. Yeah? It's an identity, let's say, that we developed because of certain circumstances, and it's not entirely true. And so we now want to optimize this set of experiences. And what can happen very easily is that we just go ahead and we create another false identity that's perhaps a little better, a little more functional, but it's not real. It's not our authentic true self. It's not who we really are. And we can use it, and this is just because as humans, we are very, very creative and we're very skilled at manipulating our experience. We can use the techniques that to help us, such as focused attention and open monitoring, to make us more artificial and more false. So one famous way of pointing to this is a phrase in the Zen that says something to the extent that you should not put another head on top of the one that you already have. Yeah? So this is kind of a very common problem when people first start to seriously dedicate themselves to contemplative practice. They basically acquire a new personality, a spiritual me. I'm going to put all the old me away, and I'm just going to now be the spiritual me who is. If we don't see through this, if we don't see that this is a construct which is not entirely real, it can be very dangerous, because we can actually end up in a artificially created reality that's a kind of an inflated state in which we see ourselves as much better than we actually are. And when that happens, when we start to believe this, then we lose perspective on the relationship with other people. We basically start to use other people to mirror back to us how great we are. And our relationships become about that. I'm great, and other person's job is to mirror me back, yeah? To confirm how great I am. And at that point, we can't actually have accurate relationship. We lose the ability to have accurate relationship. Many of the problems that people in the teaching positions of contemplative practice get into have to do with this problem. That basically there is this false self of the teacher being super perfect, or a person being super perfect. And then from that very exalted perch, you can't make a real relationship with anybody. The other people are just way down below you, and you can't actually relate to them as a real people. And it's very important to be mindful of this. And so one way why this awareness practice is good, because it teaches that one of the central concerns is that we're authentic, that we are an authentic human being. So rather than thinking of ourselves that these techniques are going to make us perfect, we're going to be some, how do you say, superhuman. They actually have to make us real, yeah? Genuine human being. So that is, so the awareness types of practice are very good for that, because they actually, awareness embraces all of the experience, so embraces other people in the field of experience, and oneself at the same time as the other person. So while this has not been yet tested, there are some indications that these types of awareness practices help with relationships. And there are types of meditations that are done with another person, where you actually facilitate the relationship. The meditation actually helps with authentic relationship. Now, I'm looking at a line here by Sinto, and it says to talk about can I change, actually, and what it takes. I thought about that after he told me this, and I thought, well, you can change, but I think for me it's a little too late. I do. Okay, that was a joke. So I think that actually we have an enormous capacity to change. Actually, we are a continuously changing system or organization. And for us to actually maintain certain patterns, particularly the ones that we feel stuck with, takes tremendous effort. This is why when we have unhealthy habits of the mind, we always feel drained and kind of exhausted and sort of under the weather, because perpetuating things like that takes a lot of effort. The system is naturally dynamic. We can change, but it takes repeated practice. And it takes repeated practice because one thing that we understand now because of the way the brain works. So there are two buzzwords currently that are very popular and actually important to understand. And one is neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is a relatively recent discovery that brain changes anatomically in response to experience. So that if we cultivate certain experience, our brain is not only going to change in terms of how it works, but actually the anatomy inside the brain, the way the cells are connected with each other, is going to change. So much so that we can actually measure that certain parts of the brain that are involved in those experiences that we cultivate tend to be larger. And the other word is epigenetics. And epigenetics is, was actually until recently very, very controversial. It was thought as to be a very backward way of thinking, all the way to a Lamarckian sort of idea that you can inherit things that you learned, that your parents learned. But actually, epigenetics is a discovery that the way that our genes express changes in response to our experience. That we can cultivate certain experiences and as a result control the way the genes are expressed. Now, in a very simple example, we can have a gene that codes for diabetes, let's say type 2 diabetes with late onset. We can regulate our life, our exercise, and our diet in such a way that that gene never expresses itself. It never turns on, even though we have it. So of course, you all know this, but we have many, many genes, and most of them don't do anything. They just sit there. And there are some of those that, it's good that they sit there because they do really nasty stuff when they're turned on. Now, the question becomes very interesting is how do genes change, or how does expression of gene changes when we cultivate optimal experience in life, such as, for example, contemplative states. So this is a very new cutting-edge research, and I think last year, I believe, or 2010, Elizabeth Blackburn, who got a Nobel Prize for discovering telomerase function, was involved in one such study. And the results are complicated, and genetics is not my field, but I will just say what the direction of this research is. And the direction is that there is some indication that contemplative practice prolongs life. In other words, it changes the genetic functioning that controls the length of life. So this is, of course, very exciting. More research has to be done to show this decisively. Scientific research of contemplative practice is not an easy thing because there are a lot of confounding factors that have to be sifted through. But probably in many ways, scientific research of contemplative practice is one of the most exciting fields of brain research, because we're seeing experiences and the mental states and the changes in the brain that in many ways we can say we don't see with quote-unquote normal population. We see certain things that are really at the higher level of human development, and we can see some of the changes in the brain. So even though meditation research is now very popular, the actual fact is that it's really very new. Professor Goff mentioned the functional magnetic resonance imaging. Functional magnetic resonance imaging that sort of revolutionized the neuroscience and allowed us to see functioning of the brain in certain detail was invented in '92. Yeah? And it took maybe another 3 or 4 or 5 years to work out the kinks. As wonderful as it is, and if you really think about the technology and how it actually works, it's really something like out of Star Trek. Compared to the complexity of the brain, it's still very crude. The brain is incredibly complex. It's very subtle. There are many, many changes occur in it, and our capacity to actually track these changes and to understand them is still at an early stage. And so this research, of course, in the contemplative practice is also relatively new, and I think it is now 10 or 11 years since the first fMRI study of meditation was done at Harvard. So we're really at the beginning of this very interesting field of understanding the far reaches of human potential and understanding how the brain and the rest of our body changes as a result of that. Okay, thank you.
In the first part of it, you have one question, Zoran, right? Question from the house. Yes.
Last night I actually went to YouTube and watched your BBC interview, you know, where you,
yes.
You know,
where the guy came and put the camera like this in my head.
Yes, that's right. You know, and you had, I believe, a monk.
Yes,
know,
that's
MRI
right. Yes,
machine,
yes.
And you know, I think there was something said that he was able to control or reverse his diabetes
That's
as
right.
well as
That's right.
gangrene.
That's right.
If you could share with us, you know, two
Yes.
things. Number one is what do you think actually went on? What did he do to
Yes.
be able to do that, which is quite extraordinary?
Yes.
And number two, what supposedly he was able to do, did he continue to achieve that for himself? And perhaps number three, most importantly, how do we acquire that ability to suppress or eliminate diseases such as diabetes?
Wonderful.
Can we hear the back?
Can I ask you what your background is? What do you do? Are you a doctor?
No. I'm just you know, a corporate kind of a person. Yeah.
Ah, okay. No, I just wanted to gauge my response. I'm going to get up if you don't mind. And is anybody else cold or just me? Okay. Can we just lower down the air conditioning a little bit? Thanks. So this is a very interesting case that kind of landed into my lab by sort of an accident. And a young monk, his name is Pagyab Rinpoche. He's a young teacher in the Tibetan Buddhist style of meditation, and he's a Tibetan who had a kind of a rough time getting out of China and endured some hardship. One of the things that appears prevalent in the Tibetan population, and this is probably genetic, is that there's a very high rate of diabetes. And this high rate of diabetes, people have explained in different ways. One explanation is that the diet among the highlanders, those Tibetans who actually live up at a high altitude, is largely barley and yak meat. That's pretty much all there is to eat there. And so when they go from that type of a diet and life in which they walk for great distances into the India, where their life in a community in India is fairly sedentary, and the diet is very high in carbohydrates and sugar, their system cannot handle that. This is not to say that high incidence of diabetes is a result of that. There is some sort of a genetic predisposition. Another genetic feature of many people from Tibetan background is some similarity to American Indians, to native Indians in the United States, which is low resistance to alcohol. So that a person can try alcohol 4 or 5 times and become profoundly addicted. And I've seen Tibetan monks who basically died from alcoholism within 3 years, 4 years, drinking actually very little by, I'm from Eastern Europe, that's like nothing, it's like after lunch, drink or something. But for them, it completely undid their system. Their body could not at all handle this chemical. So there is something of that. And then for him, the onset of diabetes, diabetes progressed because of not being attended to. And one feature of diabetes is that very poor circulation on the periphery of the body. Particularly in legs, the circulation gets so bad that basically gangrene will set in. And usually for advanced diabetes, the legs have to be amputated at some point. It was arranged for him to travel from India to United States to receive a treatment at American hospitals. He visited 3 or 4 hospitals in New York City, top level, our best hospitals, and basically was told the same thing. If you don't cut off the leg, the gangrene is going to spread through your whole body and you're going to die. And he was young. He was in his, I think, early to mid-30s when this started, and he had some reluctance to cut his leg off. So in kind of a last-ditch attempt to avoid this, he didn't know what to do, so he sent a letter to the Dalai Lama and said, well, he is in this sect, in the same sect. And he said, well, what should I do? This is my situation. Can you please give me some advice? And the Dalai Lama said, well, you should really listen to what the doctors say, and if there is no other way, then you should really have your leg amputated and take all the medications and all that. But if you decide to take a chance and not to have your leg amputated, then try this meditation. Here is a meditation that maybe it will help you. You try it, do it, and see what happens. Now, the trick here is that he was able to convalesce in somebody's apartment and not do anything except that meditation for about 2 years. So he did something like 8 hours a day at average, probably, of this meditation. And this amount of conditioning or has something to do with how effective this is. So the meditation actually is very interesting. For me, it was very interesting to hear, to have him tell me what he did, because I could recognize from reading literature and talking to other meditation teachers over the many years that actually has a lot of similarities with other meditations within the Buddhist traditions, especially within the Taoist traditions and some within the Hindu tradition. And so it was very interesting to see that actually people from different cultures throughout the history, centuries, have discovered similar mechanism that does something to the body. And that I found that very interesting and also kind of reassuring. So the practice works like this. Generally, this kind of practices have been considered a secret practice, and they're not given outside of the student-teacher relationship. But at some point, I think the Dalai Lama himself also has said that it's time for all this to be known. It's time that there is no more secrets. We should make everything known, and we have to really openly look at these practices. So the practice goes like this. The first part of the practice is to raise the level of energy and internal heat in the body. And there is a center, in Chinese it's called Tantian. I think in Japanese it's called Tanden. I'm not sure of the other names, but they pretty much, everybody agrees it's in the same place. It's below the belly button about, I don't know, maybe like an inch lower or something like that. I think of it as somewhere around the 5th lumbar vertebrae and in front. It's a point, and so basically the person inhales and holds the breath in this area and focuses very strongly in this area, and after a while they start to feel the heat starts to develop. In other words, the body temperature starts to rise. Now, this is not, so maybe in the beginning, you sort of help with the imaginings, like a hot little, like a red point or a tiny little piece of coal or something. But actually, the rise of temperature is not imaginary. Once it starts to happen, it has been measured that actually people can raise the body temperature through this technique. And there has been a fairly well-known study by a respected researcher studying some of the yogis who can do this at some kind of a, I don't know, exceptional level, Maybe I shouldn't say this, but to me it sounds like a circus level, where basically a person can go out in the winter, Tibetan winter, which is like really, really cold, take a wet sheet, throw on his naked body and dry the sheet. That's how much heat they generate. So, okay, that's like, but for healing, that's not necessary. For healing, just some heat becomes generated. The next step is to move this concentrated heat upward in the body. And so the person moves this heat not exactly through the spinal column, but kind of a parallel. There's like a vertical line that they follow that goes straight down through the body. And they move it up to the centers, through different locations. And then when they get to the brain, they circulate this energy through the brain. And this circulation through the brain is standard in Taoism, it's a standard in Tibetan tradition, it's a standard in other traditions. It's amazing that people all over discover the same method. Then after the brain has been stimulated to a certain point, then the energy can be brought down to whatever part of the body needs healing. And so at that point, he would take the energy down into his leg and bring the energy down into his leg. And so it means he would keep his mind focused on the diseased part of the body and keep repeatedly bringing it there and feeling increase in the energy. So we can say increase in the nerve level of stimulation, increase in the blood flow, which means increase in the immune system response, and so on in this particular part. Now, it is well known in the medicine that anywhere in the body where you place your attention, that's where you're going to increase the blood flow in that area. Just by placing your attention to some part of the body and holding it there, you will increase the flow of blood in that area. If you increase the flow of blood, you will also increase the immune response because you're increasing metabolism and so on. And so traditional way that this has been described for centuries is that the energy and the mind is like a horse and a rider. So the mind directs the energy, the horse, and wherever the mind goes, that's where the energy has to go. So it will be very interesting to find out exactly what medical level immune system and so on changes he has done. And what's interesting in his case is that the doctors at the hospitals have a pre and post data. In other words, they have his data before he started this meditation, and now they have his data after he's done this. Unfortunately, we don't have this for the scanner, and it turned out that he didn't really like being in a scanner. So we have a couple of scans of him, and we'll see if we can get some kind of something interesting out of that data. Or even as relatively advanced in meditation as he is, and he teaches also, he's a young Buddhist teacher, he found the scanner experience to be overwhelming and scary. The idea to put his head in a machine, it just was not within his range of experience. And he just felt overwhelmed. And granted, scanners are noisy and they can be unpleasant, and it takes a sort of a person used to our civilized kind of a life with cars and machines not to be afraid of a machine. So I think that takeaway message from this is that we can optimize the immune system and functioning, at least immune system, but probably some other parameters, by placing attention into the diseased part of the body. We can help ourselves to place attention there by visualizing some positive image that means something positive to us. That helps the mind to stay there. It's not easy for mind to stay someplace when you put it there, yeah? Because it just gets distracted, like 2 seconds later it's thinking about something else. That's just how it is. So one way to encourage it is to give it something pleasant and meaningful. So if you have a religious feeling, you can have a religious symbol that symbolizes some positive qualities and energy. If you have or you can make up your own, whatever you want. Okay, does that answer the question? Sort of.
Need some practical exercises.
Yes. This kind of exercises you can find actually. They have now been written about. There are a number of books on Tibetan Buddhism that are written about the development of the inner heat practice. They're of course they're written within the traditional language of that contemplative practice, so that they sort of like sound a little bit like a gibberish when you first read them, but you have to kind of learn what the technical terms mean to understand. And these practices are generally not taught for improving health; they're taught for enlightenment. And so they're explained in that context, that this is something that's going to lead towards our mind recognizing its own nature. So that's how they're designed. In Taoist tradition, there is more emphasis on health, and often the descriptions are more approachable in terms of the technique. But also, I think within Chinese cultures, there is a lot of poetic and metaphoric language, and sometimes you can open one of these texts and read and not understand a single thing that they're saying. Even though all are it's translated into English, you know every word, but when together it doesn't mean anything. So, but you can find, there's definitely many translations now. Yes.
I have spoken to meditation people, and they say that one of the greatest things is able to control pain. So for cancer patients, there are people who meditated and reduced pain. I do not know whether people like Professor Kwong, who was in the hospital, clinical doctor, medicine business, we could actually try it in hospitals and see whether it works, properly measured. Because apparently, when you meditate, you produce an enzyme equivalent to opiate.
Yes.
Then
there are two different mechanisms that we know of today by which pain is helped through meditation. Young colleague of mine, Fadel Zaidan, who is at the Wake Forest University, has done some very interesting, wonderful studies recently. I think I mentioned that to Sinto last time we spoke on the phone. So one level is actual change in the level of pain that is created through release of endorphin type of. The other, which is even more interesting, is a change in the cognitive control. That is change in how we are perceiving the pain. Because one thing that people who study pain, and this is a big part of medical field, noticed is that our level of pain is determined independently by two things: the actual level of pain, or relative, and then our own interpretation of the pain. So very often when a person is in pain, they have a reaction: I can't take this, I can't tolerate this, get me out of this, whatever you need to do, just get me out of this experience. I cannot have this experience. We can say psychologically what happens in this instance is that experience of sensation of pain is disorganizing the sense of self. It's overwhelming our coherent sense of self. And this is an experience that's very frightening and unpleasant. And so two things can happen. Meditation can help in two ways. One is that it teaches us to more accurately experience the actual sensation. What does this sensation actually feel? So rather than running away from pain and saying, okay, I will imagine something else. I don't want to feel my pain. I'm going to think about something else. Actually, pay attention to pain and really look in great detail. What is this sensation like? What is it like? What is this sensation? And so, almost like having a kind of a scientific mind, you're exploring the minute details of the sensation. So what that does is relaxes sort of the hysterical reaction to pain. Yeah, like I can't have this sensation. And also strengthens the cognitive control mechanisms in the brain, particularly in the prefrontal cortex and the cingulate gyrus, that both regulate the pain and regulate our ability to tolerate our experience. Okay? So we basically can, with meditation, both diminish the actual level of pain and increase our capacity for pain regulation, to regulate the pain. So those are the two aspects.
Can being too aware be a bad thing? For example, if you have a cut and you say, I want to focus on that sensation, I want to feel it and everything, it starts to be heightened. As opposed, it starts to be heightened. You start to become too aware of it. And I guess the leading question would be, is too much meditation a bad thing? Or can it be a negative experience?
Okay, so those are two very different questions, I would say, but let me try to answer. I think that paying attention to our experience is something that we have to learn how to do properly, slowly. And it's not very easy to suddenly find yourself in a pain and then just say, okay, now I'm just going to pay attention to it and it should go down, or somehow it should be better. Even though Fadell's studies showed that people, after 4 days or 20 minutes of meditation, separately from their pain perception, is decreased and the pain tolerance is increased. How we pay attention to a sensation like pain is critical. So, for example, if I cut myself in this example and I go like, oh, it's a cut, I'm paying attention, oh, I'm feeling it. So it just gets like to be like a winding up, and so. So that's the first part. It can, it has also techniques that have been studied where you do the opposite. You basically don't pay attention on pain. You pay attention to something positive or something. You distract yourself, and there is some benefit of that as well. I don't think it's as effective. But also, I think that we can use pain to actually develop as human beings. Yeah? There is an old Hindu saying, God gave us pain so we can turn to Him. It's a kind of a funny saying, But what it's trying to express is that we can use discomfort, if we pay attention to it properly, to actually develop our mind. Yeah. So that's one. Now, can too much meditation be a negative experience? We have a capacity to become addicted to just about anything in life. It seems like all of us are, some of us are more susceptible to being addicted, and some of us are less, but we can become addicted to anything. Buying shoes, money, chemical substances, anything. Meditation can also become an addiction. It can turn into a way of avoiding life, way of avoiding dealing with one's problems. Generally, the way that the meditation teacher would tell you is like, okay, so you're going to meditate, you're going to start meditating, first 5 years is just a misery. It's like struggle to learn the techniques, yeah? It's just very hard. you know, and you know, you have to get yourself to do it, and you don't want to do it, and it's very, very difficult. So the meditation teacher will say, okay, first 5 years is the worst thing. And the second 5 years, you're going to feel really nice. You're going to have some really nice experiences because you learned the technique, and now you know how to tweak your experience, and you're going to be really enjoying it. Now, here is a period where there is some danger. You can actually learn to elevate certain neurotransmitters in your body just by mental techniques, and you can simply become addicted to certain experiences that arise in meditation, and this will become an addiction. And to the extent that this becomes a serious addiction, it's a problem. And traditional teachings warn against getting addicted in the states of pleasure. They're not saying that, you know, we must be masochist and we must suffer all the time. They're saying just that there's a problem that to watch this very addictive. In California, we have a saying, it's a kind of a psychological disease that's called flight to light. Yeah? Where a person starts a spiritual practice, they have some good experiences, and now the only thing they want to do in life is have a nice spiritual experience, sit on a beach, meditate, wonderful, but their life is disintegrating around them. Yeah? Their relationships are not working, the careers, nothing is working, you know, but they are feeling wonderful. They have figured out the way. Okay, this, as we know with all addiction, this is going to end. You know, this wonderful thing. The addiction has a kind of a bad side effect. So yes, it's possible to use meditation in a wrong way. And just to finish this 5-year program, you know, this is not like a sort of a communist 5-year plan for the meditation, you know, 5-year plans. So the teacher will say, okay, so in the third 5 years, you're actually going to start to get some understanding. And then in the last 5 years, you get deep. The meditation really gets deep. And then after that, you actually know something. But before this, for this 20 years, you're just learning, 20 years learning. And so that is the traditional way. Now, it sounds awful, yeah, because you think like, you know, 20 years, you got to be kidding me. You know, I'm not going to spend 20 years doing something. I just got out of the PhD program or whenever you know, so that's enough, you know, enough misery. But actually, one thing that is very nice about scientific studies of meditation is that now there is a lot of evidence in the last couple of years that meditation has an effect even at the very, very small doses. So I just mentioned a study of pain that shows that teaching people, the people who meditate for 4 consecutive days, or 4 days, for 20 minutes only, were able to actually reduce their, to increase their pain threshold. 8 weeks of mindfulness practice has been recently shown to actually already make anatomical changes in the brain. 8 weeks. Now, of course, the question is, how long are those positive changes going to last? And that really depends on whether we do some practice, whether we continue to do some practice, or we don't, whatever kind of experience we cultivate, those experiences are mediated by the brain function. The brain anatomy changes as a result of those experiences. And with the brain anatomy, I'm sure the anatomy of the entire body is changing. The genetic expression is changing. So we are essentially creating ourselves. That is the exciting part of this. We're coming to kind of a understanding that we are actually creating ourselves ongoingly. We're continuously creating ourselves, so we are actually evolving ourselves. And that is an amazing process. Thank you. Yes?
I think we recognize that changes that takes place as you have down when the brain reacting to experience. But it would seem to be very difficult to correlate it directly with one specific pain, cancer, or diabetes. We have been
Okay.
exploring in terms of contemplative meditation. Where most of the time we don't do it. And when we do it, we find the changes. What I'm saying is that there may be other experiences beyond just meditation alone.
Oh, absolutely.
That causes different changes. And to make the direct correlation,
I see, okay.
that meditation alone is the way.
Um,
But it does help that in meditation we are able to clarify where we are
yes.
and make it a more holistic
Yes.
approach to understanding of our human health and behavior.
Yes, I agree. So first, let me apologize if I sound like I'm selling meditation. I'm not. It's just that that's the research that I do, so I know about that, but I don't study. Definitely, we can. We can cultivate other types of experiences that can have a beneficial effect. So there's no doubt about that. But there's another issue that I think I don't know if you were intending to point to, and that is that these studies are actually quite difficult to do because there's a lot of confounds. Our confounds means that other things that we're not looking in our study could be contributing to the results that we're seeing in our study. This is because human experience is very complex, and all kinds of things influence us. And so to actually tease out that just this thing is actually doing this thing, we don't yet have, we can design the good experiments, we have the statistics and all that, but we have to treat it gently. So I think when I talk generally, this is general talk. It's not science talk. When we talk science, then we have to really say, really what we understand is like this little thing. And,
we meditate, right? More for spiritual well-being, calmness. For people, maybe for but in another Chinese tradition, maybe because Qigong, right? It's actually for the they use meditation, but more for healing.
Yes, for healing. That's right. I think I mentioned.
Tibetan monk, right? Practicing Qigong.
That's that's what I was saying. So what I was saying is that these energy practices exist apparently all over the world in certain form, and definitely within the Taoist tradition, within the Buddhist tradition, within the Hindu traditions, they're very similar. Now, it's very likely that they were discovered independently in these different areas. And then at some point also it's likely that there was information travel and people compared their practices with each other. We know basically that there was a lot of travel between India and China and Tibet, but there was also a lot of travel of information to Mediterranean areas and back over the many centuries, particularly in the antiquity. So it's possible that there is some, both things happened, that this information traveled and also that it was discovered independently. Yes, the Qigong is one of the meditations that I was mentioning in the Taoist tradition. So it's basically a way to raise the energy level in the body and to open up the channels. So understanding of traditional medicines like Chinese medicine or like Ayurvedic medicine is also a big field of research in science today. Trying to understand what actually, in scientific terms of understanding of the body, is occurring when, let's say, we raise the chi level in the body. Just the two main currents of the teaching within the, let's say, traditional Chinese medical system, or TCM as it's called in the West, are very interesting just in terms of thinking about it from the scientific viewpoint. So according to one school of thought, we heal when we elevate the energy level in our body. So according to this viewpoint, our normal state is too low on energy. Our vital energy is too low. So what we need to do is elevate this level of vital energy, and then this elevated level is going to take care of the rest of the things. That's one school. Then the other school is saying, well, no, actually, this disease is a result of the particular channels being blocked. So what we want to do is we want to open the channels and go through the channels with whatever technique we use, whether it's acupuncture or acupressure or just with mind, and open the channels until the energy is flowing. There are two different ways. What actually happens in the body? People are studying this. There are some studies at Harvard indicating that there are certain bioelectrical currents through fascia or connective tissue that may have something to do with energy, acupuncture energy flows as they are understood in traditional medicine. This is not my field, so I'm not really, I don't know all the details about it, but definitely yes.
I probably want to round up the discussion before we have the tea break. Some of you may not know that pain itself is a protective mechanism. When you scream to your body, you realize that, and you ask other friends in medicine, that the pain fibers are concentrated around the fingertips. So you're sensitive to touch those things. So the concentration here rather than the back. And so I look after a lady, a middle-aged lady with cancer, and she told me something because she was a kid of a career, a CEO of a big company, and had 2 kids. At the age of 40, she was diagnosed with cancer of the breast. She was very, very angry and very religious, pious Christian. I was angry with God. I taught my career now. I'm stricken down with cancer. I have 2 young kids. And got all the pain and all that. Then she told me something which I use it as the editorial of the Singapore Medical Journal. The editorial is the pain. He told me, in fact, I don't mind the pain of the body, but the pain of the mind. So it's the editorial was, the pain of the mind is worse than the pain of the body. And I don't mind the pain of the body, the pain of the cancer operation, but it's anger that I have, and all this worry of my kid growing, that's what's more painful to me. Now, before you leave, the 2 words he introduced, which I hope you remember. You remember the 2 words he introduced? He said 2 words, medical terms. One is called neuroplasticity, meaning that the brain can evolve some cells. When I was a medical student some 40 years ago, I was told that when you reach 40 years, the brain will not grow anymore. Then it's a terrible thought. Then you're going down. I then realized that some years ago, or 25 years ago, I was at Cambridge doing some studies on Alzheimer's disease, and we were told that the brain can grow if you stimulate the brain. Very interesting ideas. Just from there, all ideas came out. So neuroplasticity means that if you stimulate the brain, it's not the total brain cells, but it's the connecting tissues of the cell. This part of the brain, the front part of the brain is called the frontal lobe. So as you go for your coffee, you will realize that if you have a way to image your brain, there are more microglial cells because he has told you many things. And Mr. Ang here told you the BBC program. You listen to more things, more of these cells will grow. So that's the The second word he introduced is neurogenesis. Sorry, epigenetics. Epigenetics. It's a buzzword now. So some of my friends are doing some research on Alzheimer's disease. They couldn't find the gene. Then maybe it's epigenetics, that the environments or experiences can change. This is a very interesting idea because my colleague in Harvard told me, I was down there to give a lecture that, no, you can never prevent dementia. So it's interesting, they want to prevent dementia. If we know that the causes, dementia is linked to hypertension, it's something you can do to control experiences. You know it's linked to cholesterol, it's something you can do. So it's a big project we're doing. I told Mr. Ang over the Jurong area that we're doing a big study down there now, old people, that if we can bring down the prevalence of dementia and depression, that would be wonderful. We can, doesn't mean the Americans, like tell us you cannot do it, you can't. You can't. I was telling Ms. Ang this morning, interesting conversation. When I was a student at Harvard, I was told that you can never bring down suicide. If people are suicidal, nothing you can do. Then they've done something in Singapore. The first country in the world that brought the suicide rate down for old people is here in Singapore. Very important now. Published in the World Journal. And Emily Ho here is also, we call it suicidologist. Suicide studies. I tell you, the first country in the world. Things we can do. So dementia, so the Jerome's trying to do something. That's the interesting, good news of our research. And all of you here, I'm told from the list that Mr. Wee has given me employment, that they are leaders in their own right in the companies, or the younger ones like Emily, Sue, and Amanda, the usual leaders. I think during crisis, how to make the brain work, how you are. So things like meditation is interesting because how you are. The crisis, you are equally agitated, you cannot think clearly. And some years ago, or 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I was the CEO of IMH. Then there was a crisis, you all know, SU006 crashed at Taipei. And there's a problem down there, they refused to allow the pilot to come back home. And so the SRA management rang me and said, can you go to Taiwan and convince them to bring our pilot back? So I went over to Taiwan, it was Saturday night, and I looked at all the crew. Credit to SRA, they selected the captain. The captain was very calm. But as the crew was very agitated, crying away. So in the crisis, if you are a captain, you keep them calm, excellent. In the crisis, your own company, problems, and you yourself crash there, can't think about it. When you are able to disengage, as you're saying, Kelly, about awareness and all that, then you can be a better leader. And I told them also last week there was an interesting article in the New York Times of silence. Now we are bombarded. As you say, you start here, you got email coming in between now, everything, driving a car, music, everything around. So if you are sometimes, so the writer is called Pico Aya, very good writer. Pico Aya, he was also into meditation.
Oh, he had an article in New York Times.
In Japan and all that. And he does things some of you have done, and so we seem to have done also. Sometimes we go for quietness, you think he goes 2 weeks of silence, and to disengage all these things, you find that you can think more clearly. So this is how we can learn in terms of your mental health and better leaders. And then Coleman is telling us
yes. Well, that concludes our Undefeated workshop. I hope you reflect on it, and I would like to have our speakers come forward for a round of applause.
Okay. Thank you.
NUS Board of Trustee, Mr. Philip Tan, to present tokens of appreciation to both our chairs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's for you, yes.
Something for you to reflect on.
All right.
Beethoven.
Oh, Beethoven. Yes. Well, that's
As mentioned,
definitely
this
wonderful.
concludes this workshop, but there will be two workshops following this. So those of you who are in Paul Ekman, the